Hi, I'm David Fetter, Executive Editor Technical for the Prepared Foods Network, welcoming you all to a special Prepared Foods video on the power trend of immunity. Last year, the first full year out of the global health pandemic, product development experts were wondering if the digestive health and immunity trend would slow down. Not hardly. According to a recent release by Vision Research Reports, the U.S. Digestive Health Products Market Size Share Report, 2024 to 2033, revealed that sales of such products in this country are forecast to climb some 250% in the next 9 years, from around $13.5 billion to more than $30 billion. To look into this phenomenon, we have two very special guests, dairy fermentation scientist and nutritional immunity expert, Dr. Dana McCurdy, and Dr. Miguel Freitas. He's Vice President of Nutrition and Scientific Affairs for Danone North America. Welcome, doctors.
Hi, David. Thanks for having me back. And Dr. Freitas, it's really nice to meet you.
Hey, David. Thank you for having me back. Also, it's great to meet you, Dr. McCurdy.
Yeah, it's always great to have you guys. I mentioned the strong and steady growth in demand for digestive health products. Dr. Freitas, you and Danone have been investing heavily in research into deeper understanding of the gut microbiome and the microbiome space in general. But I'd like to ask both of you, what would be some of the main things that we still don't know when it comes to how the gut microbiome works? Let's start with you, Dr. Freitas.
Gut health and the gut microbiome are increasingly recognized as true foundations of overall health. In fact, this is increasing, but now we know that almost 25% of Americans mention digestive health as the number one most important aspect of their health overall. And research is following. Research continues to suggest that the impact of the gut microbiome is quite broad. So it spans from benefits to our own digestive system to supporting the health of our immune system, lungs, skin, and the list really goes on. So for me, one of the most exciting and emerging areas of gut microbiome research is really around the gut-brain connection. And I've been reading a lot about this. So there's new studies suggesting that certain probiotics have the ability to improve mental well-being or improve cognitive health or even sleep quality. Of course, more research is needed before we can have any definitive connection between the effect of a probiotic and mental health. But I'm really excited to see that this area of research continues to expand, especially because mental health is such an issue these days. Another thing that I find really fascinating about the gut microbiome is that it's unique for each one of us. I typically say that it's like our fingerprints. So in other words, we all have a unique combination of gut bacteria, very similar, again, to our fingerprint. And that means there is not one size fits all when it comes to healthy combination of gut bacteria. What it could be good for you, David, as having certain bacteria or avoiding other bacteria might not be the same for me. So while that's really interesting, it also makes things very complicated, especially when people are trying to define what a healthy microbiome is, because for you, it could be one thing, and for me, it could be something else. So it's a challenge. And we do require more research to try to puzzle that out, especially given the answer could be very different for different individuals. So that's not to say we don't know anything about what makes potentially a healthy microbiome. We do know that typically a greater diversity of gut microbiota is beneficial, particularly in an adult, but we also know that in a baby, for example, we tend to want a low diversity of their gut microbiome after they are born and when they develop in the first year. We know that bacteria like Bifidobacterium, if they are predominant, it's usually associated to a health outcome versus a disease outcome. And that's true both in adults and in infants. So there's a lot of things we don't know, but there's a lot of things that we're starting to understand much better. I want to talk a little bit about one of our hero probiotics at Danone, which includes the Bifidobacterium strain that has been shown to reduce the frequency of minor digestive discomfort. And in this case, we do know that the Bifidobacterium is quite important when it comes to the benefits of Activia. So we're already using some insights in research to inform us better on how we can even develop products with more benefits. But it's possible that in the future, as the science evolves, the next generation of biotics will be selected on their ability to complement specific gut microbiome deficiencies and imbalances, which again can be quite different for you and for myself. So that's really the bottom line. We can even conceive that each one of us will be able to consume bacteria or specific biotics that can improve health or detect risk factors for certain disorders at the earliest possible moment, therefore reducing their risk to developing disease, but we're not really there yet. So there's a lot left to learn about how the microbiome works. And the more we can learn about it, the more we can help people achieve better overall wellness in a variety of many different ways, David.
Dr. McCurdy, it seems like this is a lot in your area as well, when you have to go and develop, new strains and new techniques for fermentation, finding that balance between having, not one size fits all, as Dr. Freitas points out, but then having to appeal to, millions who need to, who are going to be buying a new product. Danone can't make 8 billion different, types of products. So how do you go about approaching that challenge?
Well, I absolutely agree with Dr. Freitas. He made some wonderful points. And really what it comes down to is that research is key to uncovering all of these different solutions that improve gut health. No two gut microbiomes are alike. So even like on a consumer level, as someone who goes to the store, purchases these different products, sometimes it is beneficial to try multiple different products and product lines, even from the same company, just because you don't know what your microbiome is like. And especially for folks who have maybe gone through a round of antibiotics, that's going to change your gut microbiome. So those microorganisms may react differently to the food that you're consuming if your diet has not changed. So I think that, again, there are so many options and there's so many different avenues that need to be explored. Really, it boils down to we need more research, and this is such an advancing, field of research right now that it's really, really interesting to be part of it. And I feel like it gives you a lot of different avenues to explore, especially on, the consumer level, where yes, we've got these great products, but how can we make them better? And that's really the push forward.
I think what that opens up, especially for our audience, is with so much about the microbiome that we're seeing in media and in products and everything, that it must seem to many consumers that, we know everything. And I think it's great to point out that, hey, we don't. But, Dr. McCurdy, you mentioned research, and Dr. Freitas, I know that Danone recently picked as two of its grant winners in your annual gut microbiome yogurt and probiotic fellowship program. Am I getting that right? Trying to remember that. But Evan Chrysler at University of Wisconsin Mad and Arushana McNogia, is that right? From Baylor College here in Texas. Their research will, and I wrote this down, so I'm going to quote from the release. their research examines the effects of timing of ingestion and type probiotic on metabolism and immunity, which adds a whole nother layer, because not only are you looking at what probiotics do what for what demographic, but now we're talking about the timing. Can you give us just a thumbnail explanation of that research and its goals, please?
Sure, Dave. I'll try to give you a summary, and we're very proud of this program. It's been 12 years that we've been doing this program, and with more than $500,000 worth of grants that Danone North America has awarded to really empower creative research and future scientific advance in the microbiome space. And it's very exciting to see, because these grants are actually triggering in these young scientists more and more appetite to learn more in this area. So that's really one of the purposes of this grant program. But as you mentioned, this year, Evan Chrysler of University of Wisconsin-Madison and Arushana McCurdy of Baylor College of Medicine, each one of them have been awarded $25,000 to conduct research that will help understand further this topic of gut microbiome. And just to give you a little bit of an insight of each one of their projects, Evan's project will look at how certain types of lactobacillus species in the gut can help the body produce a protein called REG3, which plays a really crucial role in maintaining the barrier function of your intestine, and how the levels of that particular protein would change throughout the day. So the research will shed a little bit more light on this very intricate host microbiome interactions that exist within our body, and will hopefully further help probiotic developments and target therapies in relation to the immune system. On the other side, Arishana's research will investigate how the gut microbiome can impact blood cell production, especially after long-term antibiotic use. So her research will aim to identify which gut bacteria and which of their byproducts will help regulate this process, potentially leading to the development of new biotics, new probiotics that can be tailored specifically to the needs of certain populations. So I think, as Dr. McCurdy said, investments to better understand this unique ecosystem of the gut microbiome and the way that interacts with our own body are really important, and especially for us and for Danone, which we have within our mission to bring healthier food to as many people as possible. So we're very honored to be able to continue to do these research projects with young scientists.
I can see that if the if this research pans out in the direction, like I said, I'm especially intrigued by the timing aspect, and I'm guessing in a few years we're going to see Danone release yogurts that are specifically breakfast yogurt, afternoon snack yogurt, before bed yogurts, or similar fermented dairy products. So, and that's going to be up to you to develop those, Dr. McCurdy. That's your part of this show. So yeah, you've looked at similar issues, I know, of details regarding, I'd like to call it effective ingestion of probiotics. So it's right up your alley. And now, how does amount, because, we're talking about timing, we're talking about which probiotic bacteria, but how does the amount figure into all that? Because, like, how much does a person have to consume for gut health to be improved? Is it a once a day thing, a twice a day thing, or even a once a week issue? Talk to us.
Yeah. Well, see, that's sort of the tricky part, though. Each dosage is different, especially for each person. And it's also dependent on the strain that's used. So things like the delivery method and the route of administration also matter. And usually what we talk about are things like 10 to the 8 or 10 to the 9 CFU, which are colony forming units per mil or per gram of, say food consumed. We use this typically as kind of a ballpark estimate or almost like a starting point for, what you theoretically should be consuming. Now, always, you have to go back to the research. So research has shown that this amount of supplementation in general will have an impact on regulating the gut microbiome and improving things like immune function. What this actually means is that there are 100 million to about 1 billion live cells in that culture, or that supplement that are healthy and can form a colony. So that's very important. If you're consuming this probiotic and it doesn't actually colonize in your gut, then you're likely not going to receive any benefit from that colony, since it's not actually there. Some strains, however, are more robust than others, and they might need a lower effective dose around maybe 10 to the 6 CFU per milligram, whereas others might need a little bit more, like a higher dosage to actually have that impact on your gut health. So this is where the importance of clinical research really shines, because more is not always better. Overdosing a probiotic can cause things like, like digestive discomfort, things like bloating and gas. But, sometimes those symptoms are already being experienced by people who might have a little bit of gut dysbiosis going on. So taking that probiotic might actually outweigh those undesirable symptoms because it gives them some sort of relief from their everyday symptoms. So I guess moving on for things like the delivery method, the most common options are foods or supplements. So supplements like, the pills that you see in the aisle at the store. While both of these methods are viable methods to get probiotics into the small intestine and your digestive tract, they must be able to survive the stomach acid barrier. If they can't get through the stomach, then, there's no ability for them to colonize. So the best way for this is for the food or beverage to have enough fat content to actually coat the microbes, protect them from the stomach acid, and get them to the small intestine where they can safely colonize.
You were talking about too much, and I was reminded of, I won't mention company, especially because I can't remember the name of the company, but at Natural Products Expo, they were handing out shots that were advertising CFUs in the trillions. And for those of us who tried one of those, and there was a whole lot of chatter about that the next day, we were running to the bathroom after an hour. I mean, it was just, so I came by the booth the next day and heard all these people talking like, oh my God, don't take that, don't take that. So, but it's interesting to know that there are cases where, even if there is some associated discomfort, that something that powerful in a probiotic could have benefit. So now prebiotics, let's jump a little into prebiotics, and then we'll tie this into that emerging look at symbiotics. These are appearing to figure significantly in the efficacy of a digestive health product. So could you both expound on those factors, please? Start with you, Dr. McCurdy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess to circle back a little bit to your previous question and, to kind of discuss the risks of taking a huge amount of probiotics all at once, it typically is better to consume probiotics in smaller amounts when you first start because, again, you're introducing a new bacterium to your microbiome. So, there can be some digestive discomfort associated with that, which I'm sure you've experienced. So
Many of us
I would obviously recommend, starting small and gradually increasing your dosage, and also frequency is important. So consuming these, once or twice a day is probably better than consuming it at only once a week. You likely won't get the results that you're looking for if you're only consuming things once a week. Now, moving on to the symbiotic and the prebiotic aspect of things. So let's kind of talk about what that means. So a symbiotic is a prebiotic that is paired with a probiotic for supplementation. So prebiotics are typically fibers that feed the probiotics that live in our gut. Some common examples of the prebiotic fibers would be things like fructo and galacto-oligosaccharides, which are compounds that not only feed the probiotics, but also improve the epithelial barrier of the intestinal tract. They also improve immune health as a result of, this kind of nice, like symbiotic relationship. So polysaccharides are also a large category of different products that also have a prebiotic effect and can feed these probiotic compounds, or these probiotic organisms, sorry, excuse me. So think about like cellulose, beta-glucans, inulin is a big one, and acacia gums. These are all different prebiotic polysaccharides, and these are commonly used in a variety of food applications on the market today. They're used as things such as food fibers, but also for functions in things like drug delivery and encapsulation. So, they're pretty cool.
Yeah, I want to jump in. So I've read about the, you've got various, whether it's a drug or a vitamin or something that's encapsulated in a polysaccharide. Is there going to be enough, especially if you're encapsulating a probiotic to help it survive passage through the stomach, is there going to be enough in there to have kind of a significant metabolic benefit, or, is that just too minuscule at that point?
I think there's definitely, again, going back to the research, there are, these relationships that are built between prebiotics and probiotics, and they exist out in nature. We just have to find them. So having enough prebiotic is a very important thing. In the capsules, though, again, that would have to be based on the clinical studies that are done to see if, prebiotic A and probiotic B are actually a good combination, and if that prebiotic is sufficient. So it's not really a straightforward answer, but I don't really think that it's not a straightforward problem,
Gotcha. So, Dr. Freitas, at Danone, how are you guys looking at the whole symbiotic thrust, if you will?
Mm-hmm. Happy to give you some insights on that. Just wanted to go back to that question, that how much do you need on probiotics? And I'm fully in line, and I get that question so often when I go to conferences as well. And how much do I need of this? How much do I have to consume? And my question is pretty much always the same. Well, you have to go back to the studies that were done with this specific probiotic, and you have to follow the recommendation intake that was done in the studies. If it was with 1 cup or 1 container or 1 capsule of this probiotic every day for a benefit to, for example, reduce bloating, this is what you should try first and see if it works for you. Not just take billions and billions of probiotics, and just for any other food, including prebiotics and fiber, I wouldn't encourage anybody to just take a huge amount of them and not have any type of digestive discomfort. So it is a question that comes from many people, including healthcare professionals, and people typically think the more is the better, but that's really not always the case when it comes to biotics, as far as what we know today. So I just wanted to clarify that from my standpoint. And to answer your question about symbiotics and prebiotics, so we're at Danone, we're not only identifying novel probiotics that can provide particular health benefits, either to gut health or immune health or other benefits. But we're also working on innovation around prebiotic, and most prebiotics Most of them are fiber related. So they're really feeding some of the beneficial bacteria in the gut. And so they can help nourish some of those bacteria. For example, a lot of prebiotics have what we call a bifidogenic effect. That means that bifidobacterium feed on those prebiotics and tend to multiply faster and tend to be beneficial. And this is very well known in infants. A lot of, for example, the milks that replace breast milk are supplemented with prebiotics that mimic the natural HMOs, prebiotics from breast milk, specifically to increase the numbers of bifidobacterium, for example. So the technologies today are really allowed to incorporate both pro and prebiotics in dairy, particularly, or dairy analogs, even when the fermentation is required. And can give you an example. We have mentioned Activia before, which has a specific probiotic strain and bifidobacterium, but we also have a line with added prebiotic on that same product. So it's an inulin. So in that case, you have both probiotics and prebiotics in the same exact cup of yogurt, of Activia yogurt. So not all of them have it, but the Activia fiber in particular has it. And I like products that include both probiotics and prebiotics because you're really getting both beneficial bacteria and the food for some other good bacteria that are already in your gut. And there's a term you didn't mention, which is postbiotic, and I'm not sure you want to talk about that, but that's a newer.
We're further along in my questions, but let's open that one up.
That's a newer terminology used to define an inanimate microorganism and or their components that could confer a health benefit to the host. So it's a little bit more complex. So it's not a live microorganism, right? As a probiotic, but it's a component that originates from a microorganism, or it's a dead microorganism itself. So it's an important area to watch because, of course, in terms of products that need to be shelf stable or infant formula, for example, we have an infant formula at Danone made to support the baby's gut microbiome that includes postbiotics, which is called 3GL, which is one of the most common HMO, human milk oligosaccharides. And this is produced during the fermentation of two particular bacteria, another bifidobacterium and a Streptococcus thermophilus. So fits exactly in the definition of a postbiotic. So I really think that we'll see more and more products with all these different types of biotics as health promoting ingredients, pro, pre, post symbiotics. And I think, in the future, I think we mentioned this already, but we'll be able to take specific combinations based on our specific microbiome, maybe in the morning also, maybe in the evening. So I think it's really interesting the way this is evolving. And just to mention a little bit about symbiotics, so this term is also starting to gain some traction. There's two types. There's two definitions. One is complementary symbiotic and one is a synergetic symbiotic, but we don't really need to go into that detail. But the research is evolving pretty much as well here. And there's not as many symbiotic products on the market. Most of them are complementary symbiotics, such as Activia fiber, but I think you're going to start seeing more and more of this coming into the market.
So it sounds like the goal in research is to find the probiotic that is like a teenager and will eat just about anything, versus, the one that might need a more specific prebiotic partner. So, and then you mentioned postbiotics. Dr. McCurdy, I know that you've done some research into postbiotics and, not, oh, sorry, just that it's not just, there are more than the dead microbes or fractions of microbes or other compounds, but there's also the compounds that the probiotic that eats the prebiotic ends up excreting afterward. I'm thinking short chain fatty acids. Am I on target, or enlighten me?
Yeah, so short chain fatty acids are, one of the main, I guess, byproducts of fermentation. So it's something that, like a category of I say postbiotics that really help improve intestinal health. And, I guess the main one that we see a lot in the media is that short chain fatty acid production actually helps reduce the instances of colon cancer, which is huge because colon cancer is a horrible thing and has been very much so invading the younger populations, and we don't know why.
That's right. I read that more and more younger people are getting colon cancer, and they don't know why. Like you said, it's a frightening thing. Let's jump back a bit on the symbiotics, and are they being looked at? And question for either of you, we can start with Dr. Freitas. Are they being looked at for the type of postbiotics? When we marry the probiotic with the prebiotic, are we also looking at those to see what sorts of postbiotic action we end up with?
I have not read a lot about postbiotics in the context of a symbiotic, if that was your question. So I've seen those mainly separated right now. Just go back to the example that I gave you on one of our infant formulas, which has a postbiotic, again called 3GL, which is similar to an HMO, or a human milk oligosaccharide from breast milk, and it's produced by two different bacteria. And in this case, it's a Bifidobacterium breve and a Streptococcus thermophilus. And then those two bacteria are inactivated. So the product actually contains the inactivated bacteria plus the product of their fermentation. And of course, they're not alive. So it fits exactly the definition of a postbiotic. And in this context, some of these products could also have a prebiotic, but I haven't seen use the term symbiotic, because that's typically associated with a probiotic and a prebiotic, not a postbiotic and a prebiotic, if I make myself clear.
Kind of. Just, I was thinking in terms of, how we discussed the research that, to marry the right prebiotic to a particular probiotic bacteria. And, are we not only thinking how they're working together in synergy, but including what sort of postbiotic effect they have? But you answered that. And Dr. McCurdy, you were telling me one time before, I don't remember what it was, but about the lactic acid bacteria. Can you expound a little bit more on those?
Sure, yeah. So lactic acid bacteria, they're probably one of the most commonly used probiotics in the industry. This is one that people actually might know as a consumer who is not, a microbiologist. So we use these a lot as probiotics. They are a very this is a very, very broad category, just saying lactic acid bacteria, but they're able to consume prebiotics like inulin, fructooligosaccharides, galactooligosaccharides, that sort of good stuff. But the prebiotics then have another, like impact on these probiotics prior to consumption. So like, fructans, inulin, oligosaccharides in general, and others like, our other fiber sources, they kind of coat the probiotics and provide that effective, protective barrier to improve the survivability of the culture and things like shelf life. So under refrigerated or frozen conditions and dry storage, so keeping a low relative humidity, typically like, for people who don't know, below 50%, this can improve survivability of these cultures. And that then improves further down the line, the interaction that they have within your system. So, when you consume these live not pre, but the live probiotics compared with a prebiotic, they can produce these, postbiotics within your gut, which can provide that highly beneficial interaction. So kind of to go back to your question on postbiotics, I don't particularly see postbiotics in the market as a big buzzword like probiotics. A lot of people are still trying to understand like probiotics, what are they? How much do I need to take? How often? That sort of stuff. So introducing prebiotic to that is another, oh my gosh, what is this? How much of this do I need? Do I take them together? So then introducing postbiotic only brings more confusion to the consumer. So I feel that a lot of postbiotics are already marketed. They just aren't labeled as a postbiotic, because think of a lot of the supplements that you take on a day-to-day basis, like your vitamins. There are a lot of bacteria that produce vitamins. I guess as a result of this interaction, it is important to combine that prebiotic with the postbiotic and really focus on that survivability of the probiotic, making it through things like the duodenal enzymes, the bile salts, but then providing them with an energy source upon arrival and establishment in like the lower small intestine and the colon. So, there's a lot that goes into all of these things in this research and, in these products that are put out. Like we've discussed bifidobacterium, Dr. Freitas has talked about this in infant formula. So combining the bifidobacterium with something like inulin or polydextrose in a lipid-based capsule has a greater survivability than consuming these free cells alone. So when they're encapsulated together in, sort of a co-encapsulation of different strains, including the bifidobacterium, maybe a different lactic species, and then a prebiotic compound, you can have anywhere from 89 to 90% greater survivability, which is huge.
Wow. Yeah.
So hopefully in the future and in the near future, we should see an upsurge of these, products and development of these products that combine all of these aspects of digestive health, the prebiotic, the probiotic, and hopefully in the future, attention to the postbiotic compounds.
Wow. So I'm glad we got people like you guys on the cutting edge of this, doing all this development. And I know we barely scratched the surface on all these topics, but let's dive right into it. What are some applications and formulation concepts and ingredients that you'd like to stress to new product developers? And y'all can go carte blanche here. Nothing's too offbeat. If you want to talk about probiotic bubblegum or symbiotic Alfredo sauce or, unusual formats for fermented dairy, just, whatever, go wild. So, Dr. Freitas, I'll let you go first.
I'm not sure I can be as creative as you are, but I've seen, mattresses and some other stuff with probiotics out there in the market. Marketing tends to go much faster than science, unfortunately, sometimes. So I will not allow myself to talk about probiotic bubble gums, but I can tell you some other things that are on my mind. And I think, part of this trying to dial up what consumers are asking for and are interesting interested in is really trying to understand also where they want to improve their health and what's on top of mind for them when we're developing products that can address some of those needs. And I think it's a common misperception that a probiotic is good for everything, or also it's a common misperception that even all fermented foods that just contain cultures that allow the product to taste better even provide probiotics. So that's not always the case. So this just shows that, I mean, there's so much information out there that it's not accurate. And sometimes I'm very, very surprised with what I read in the media. And it's important to realize that there's a couple of things that are very, very critical when we're talking about benefits of probiotics, particularly. So the bacteria strain has to be clearly studied, identified, has to have a number, has to be proven in a clinical setting and found to have a specific health benefit at that specific dose in order to qualify as a probiotic. And if you go to a health food store and you turn around the product, most of the times you will not see the probiotic strain included as part of the label. So I'm not sure if you've seen any probiotic bubble gum, but my challenge is always like, what's the probiotic in this bubble gum? And it's typically impossible for folks to answer that question. So that's one point. It's strain specific, needs to be proven in a clinical setting, and needs to be administered at the right amounts, similar to those clinical studies. And then we know that dairy products are a good environment for bacteria to deliver a probiotic benefit, probably better than bubble gum, just because dairy buffers the acids in the stomach. We already talked about that the bacteria should be able to survive. It's really acidic environment. So I really always encourage the product developers that I work with to consider all these aspects of the matrix and the stability of the probiotic, and if the probiotic was actually studied in a clinical setting or not. I mean, I have nothing against supplements as long as the supplements also have been studied in a clinical setting and be proven to survive until the end of the shelf life of the product. That's really critical. I know the shelf life of a fresh fermented dairy product is not super long, and we make sure that the bacteria are in the right numbers at the end of the shelf life. And that's much harder to prove with a bottle of supplement pills that can, stay on the shelf for months and months.
Through that. Dr. McCurdy?
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Freitas makes a lot of really, crucial points. So, with all of those in mind, I personally think like if all of those criteria could be met and, like in a perfect world, you would be able to create a probiotic on the go snack. That would be something that would be wonderful because, Americans love to snack. So I think it would improve the willingness of folks to supplement with probiotics and supplement on a frequent basis. So, you would have to partner that with a fiber, so creating like a symbiotic snack bar, but also, again, making sure that the survivability on, a stomach acid level is there, making sure that they actually survive with shelf life. And then taking into another, like thought process is, okay, well, how much abuse is this product going to go through? Like, is this consumer going to keep a snack bar in their hot car over, the summer months while they're waiting to have it after maybe going to the gym or something of that nature, and then unintentionally kill all of their probiotics? Things like that really need to be considered before creating these products. But there's so many different avenues that products can be, I don't know, like, created and also, given to the consumer in kind of a novel way, that we really have a lot of opportunity here. But again, huge dairy person, huge supporter of dairy. Dr. Freitas is right. Dairy is one of the best ways to get a probiotic through to the consumer. So anything dairy related, I think, would be very helpful and very beneficial to, again, promote those probiotics and symbiotics in the market.
Is it working? I mean, are consumers, catching on to that? Just, as far as probiotics in different forms?
I think so. I think a lot of millennials and especially like Gen Z folks are really, they're really into the health scene right now. And I think that's only going to increase because now we have all of this knowledge that's freely available. And people realize that, probiotics are pretty necessary for, not necessarily a healthy lifestyle, but they really do help some people who have maybe some, digestive issues or just want to, have a consistent healthy snack, that has a health benefit. So I think this definitely, bolsters the argument that we need more functional foods in the diet and that product development should forever, increase in the probiotic space.
And I agree. It's we are seeing just this constant, and as we mentioned at the very beginning, this constant upward motion in both consumer understanding and demand for these functional products, and it's especially, I guess you could say that if there's one positive legacy of COVID, it was that it gave this huge push. The ball was already rolling on immunity, but it gave a huge push toward that. I would also like to hear more about probiotic mattresses. So, hey, the skin microbiome is a very important thing. So, I don't know how a probiotic mattress would work, but really, Dr. Freitas, do you really see probiotic mattresses?
I've seen advertisements for that. Yes.
That's one for the books, I'll tell you that. So, we are out of time. It was an incredible pleasure having you both here. You guys are always just these excellent sources of knowledge. I always feel, on one hand, I feel like I should have finished my PhD. On the other hand, it was in ultra trace minerals. It had nothing to do with this. So, but y'all really, really just provide such a great feed of information. I would love to do this again soon. You're always welcome. I want to thank our audience for joining us too. Oh my gosh, you can find a wealth of articles, podcasts, videos, other source material on immunity, including more from Dr. McCurdy and even some for Dr. Freitas at preparedfoods.com. Again, I'm David Fetter, Executive Editor Technical for Prepared Foods Media. We were with Dr. Dana McCurdy and Dr. Miguel Freitas, and we hope you guys will tune in again for some more forays into digestive health, immunity, and better for you food and beverage category in general. So, till next time.